Hey there, it's Marley Major. Before we dig in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell because you definitely don't want to miss another glorious disaster here on Every Day's a Train Wreck. Because missing an episode, now that would be a train wreck. Let's get to it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Every Day's a Train Wreck. I'm your host, Marley Major, and I evidently have a fan favorite that I'm welcoming back, Chirag Sagar, who is co-partners or whatever, co-owners with our boy Adam Torres at Mission Matters, who produces this podcast. And we were doing kind of our reset for the year and had just a great amount of fun looking at statistics for the podcast and what converted. And lo and behold, I look at the numbers and I see the Chirag podcast and the Adam podcast. By the way, it was you two, my daughter talking about her Secret Santa and wanting her Secret Santa to give her a Birkin bag, and astrology and crystals. That's what, so I don't know what you and a 17-year-old have in common plus astrology and crystals, but those were the highest performers. So Chirag, thank you for playing the game with me and showing back up for this one.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. Always good to be here and see you and your audience as well.
Yeah, and chit chat. So last week I did the first podcast of the year, and it was one that I really hesitated to do. And your amazing team over there, Jordan, who's my girl, and Matt, were really encouraging me to do like some solo podcasts so that, because we have had this, God bless us, this huge influx of new listeners. And like, it was over a month ago now, we hit like our 2 millionth download or something on YouTube, which I
Wow.
was freaking blown away. I was like, what? So, or 2 millionth view. I mentioned it to my daughter. She didn't think that was such a big deal, but I was like, okay, well, to me, that's like, I have arrived. So, but what was interesting is they said, hey, listen, you've got so many new followers now who haven't been listening to you before, even though the podcast is a little over a year old. And they said it's important because you can like catch them up to speed about a little bit about your personality, and as opposed to me always interviewing a guest, which I love to do. So I
hmm
was hesitant to do it because to me, even though I feel like all I do is talk and I could talk to a wall, it seems just strange sometimes to sit down and be like, I'm now going to tape 30 minutes just talking to myself, like about myself or whatever. And it was the first one of the year. Last year at this time, we had the California fires. We were evacuated like so many others. Thank goodness we didn't lose our homes. But it just felt like the whole thing was traumatic. It also felt like it was like 1 minute ago. And here it had been a full year. And I was probably a little bit more open and vulnerable than I normally would be on the podcast because I was just saying, listen, I don't know if you feel this way, guys, but it was a dumpster fire for me from the first week of 2025, basically till the present. And what was crazy, Chirag, is how many texts, voicemails, comments we got in different platforms saying, oh my gosh, were you talking directly to me? Like I felt like, from just different listeners. And they said, I felt the same way. And, you know, it's not how your quote's supposed to feel in January. But I thought you'd be a really great one to kind of segue into the second episode of the year. So talking about, the first one where, hey, listen, if it wasn't fabulous for you, that's okay. You're not alone. If it was fabulous, God bless. But you have definitely seen thousands and thousands of founders, people starting podcasts. They start, they don't keep going. Why do you think some people just rebound faster or better than others and actually stick with it? Because I'll tell you, I had enough come to Jesus moments last year where I was like, not necessarily with the podcast, but just kind of with everything where you're like, oh my gosh, this just feels totally overwhelming.
Yeah. So, you know, there's a point I think where you kind of reach, number one, you kind of have to ask yourself if you're enjoying it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of those things where you got to try it first, see, do you like
Yep.
it? And then if you do like it, amazing, right? Then it kind of comes down to how do you get better? And I think it comes with the mindset. One of my favorite words is kaizen, which means in
Oh, love it.
it's Toyota's philosophy of constant growth, well, Japanese philosophy for
Yes.
constant growth, constant innovation. Toyota
Mhm.
just streamlined it, integrated it into their whole business. Believe McKinsey has done the same thing.
And with
And
Six and they Toyota did it with Six Sigma, right? I think Kaizen is a part of Six Sigma.
mhm. Their whole process is like, look, you have 100,000 plus employees. If
Yep.
you can improve by 0.01%, right? That's could be millions of dollars in savings, could be
Right.
more efficiency, more optimization. It's just everyone's getting better, right? That's essentially the whole framework and
Right.
the mindset. And so with that, when you apply that similar framework to the podcast, like, I feel like you, especially with the volume of content you're creating,
Mhm.
with the amount of times that you're connecting with someone, that you're
Right.
interviewing someone, you should be improving, right?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
one
Oh,
of
for
those things.
sure. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I'm
Listen to
hoping
the
so,
first
right?
one and goodness gracious. Yeah. I'm surprised you kept me on. Yeah. Keep going.
But that's the thing, right? Is when you're looking at a podcast, it's if you enjoy it, then and it gives you a sense of like happy. It's like one of the fulfilling things that you get to do that's a little bit different. Not a lot of people are interviewing 10 hours a day like Adam is.
Right, right, which
um, you know,
that's
uh,
a whole other
that's
dumpster
a whole
fire.
other animal. But most folks are doing this once a week, right? So it's one of those things you get to enjoy it. Then if you're gonna enjoy it, it's a lot easier to improve on it, right? But
Right.
I think if you take a step back, it comes into do you kind of have that frame of mind across the board whenever you're doing anything that you do in life
So we're not talking about necessarily just being a podcast. We're just talking
in
about, let's say,
general?
people who are moms or they have their own business or whatever it was that just hit them last year. Let's say rebuilding their home after the fire took a lot more out of them than they thought. Or maybe they're a teenager. Like one of the things is I've got a senior in high school and they are all going through this early decision, early action stuff, which I'm telling you, I swear we didn't have when I was in college. Either that or I was just too challenged to know it, but the stress level is so incredible. And going to the point about, like you said, like with the podcast. So yeah, I love doing my podcast and I am getting better. And that's obviously what keeps me coming back. And then you see the numbers improve, right? But what if like one of our listeners messaged me, love her, actually, she has a podcast as well, Kate, and said she's got the same thing going, with her teenage son and as my daughter does with this college stuff. And it's like, obviously we love our kids, we keep coming back to them. But how do you, in a situation like that, when it really gets rough, like I'm sure at some points when you were
Yeah.
building Mission Matters where you're exhausted, you are like wondering, I mean, I'm putting words in your mouth, but you're wondering if anybody's listening, you're wondering if it's
Mhm.
working, you're wondering, should you ever have been a partner with Adam? I'm always trying to get you in trouble. Um, but how, like, what about when you're in those times where you need more than just, oh, I like this, I can keep
It's grit.
going.
I mean, you're talking about grit, right?
Yep.
It's I believe grit's a muscle,
Yep.
and you
Ooh,
have to
that's a
work it
good
out.
one.
It's a muscle that gets worked out, right? It's the question comes down to, have you dealt with tough times, right? I think tough times make tough people, right?
Right.
I'm sure we've heard that saying. But essentially, it's to that college student, for example, right? I
Right.
go back, like I was rejected 7 out of 8 of the colleges that I applied to, I got
You
rejected
were?
from. Yeah, oh, I ended up going to community college. I saved a boatload of money, and then I transferred to USC after, so it worked
No.
out really well.
Well, let me tell you, you guys,
Yeah.
if you guys need to Google Chirag because I'll tell you, Chirag is one of the smartest people I freaking know, and definitely one of the most ambitious. And I had no idea. That's amazing. It just goes to show you. I mean, you wouldn't know that, and all I know is like, oh, Chirag went to USC, and you don't think, but there's always that story behind.
Yep.
Okay, so
That's
keep
the thing,
going.
right? There's a lot of grit that comes with this, right? Like that it's funny because you're talking about your college your high school student that's
Hmm.
about to applying for colleges and the stress levels. Like it
Right.
sucked. That was like I go back and it's so funny to say this, but like when I was 17,
Hmm.
turning 18, trying to figure out what college to go to, like that was devastated. I was like, this is the worst experience ever. Like
Right.
I'd been going to school, high school for 4 years, taking all these SATs, and now all of that culminated to nothing. It's like, oh, what do I do now with my life? Poor me. And then
Exactly, and you're convinced your life is over,
mhm.
like, just totally over. When did you start feeling better about it? I mean, I'm sure you went to community college, and it could have been an
Yeah, no,
amazing community
it
college,
sucked,
but
but I also had a few friends that had
mhm,
gone to community college and
mhm,
transferred, and so
mhm.
I was like, "You know what? I mean, I just don't have much of a choice, right?" So it's just like, "Well, what am I
Yeah,
gonna do?" It's like, "Okay, well, you kinda do have a second option here, and you
right,
can go back to the drawing board," and so
right.
I connected with just all of the counselors. I learned about the ins and outs of like, okay, if I USC was my dream school. I knew that from high school, and
Really?
then
Okay.
even from college, I knew just because I did enough research to know that they had a lot of study abroad programs. I
Mhm.
knew the business school was great. I
Yep.
was interested in entrepreneurship. Accounting is what I thought I was gonna do, which is funny, but,
That is
it was
hilarious.
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I actually did an accounting internship my sophomore year of college, and I got sick and tired of doing expense reports behind the screen for, like,
Yeah.
2, 3 months straight, paid decently.
And you are so outgoing. I mean, that's what's crazy is I can't even believe you thought you were attracted to that.
You know what? You never know until you try, right?
Yep,
I
well,
think
that's
part
good.
of growing up is you gotta try a bunch of things and take account, no pun intended, but
Yes.
of what you don't like to do
Right,
just as much as what you do like to do, right? And you kinda
right.
check that box off, but you don't know until you do it. My dad's favorite saying is, "You gotta try everything at least once," and I was like, "Should I jump off a bridge?" And he's
Well,
like, "Okay,
that's exactly yeah. I was thinking that depending on, we also after the one we did a few weeks ago with my daughter, we got all this big influx of young new listeners. So just in case any of them decided to come back and want to hear about college, the advice is it's all going to look devastating, but you know it will turn around. But you do feel like you're going to jump off a bridge, like it is absolutely the end of the world.
Mhm."
And so you stayed in community college for a year, or how long?
It was a year. I did a 1-year transfer. So I found out here's what I ended up doing is I ended up finding out what's the bare essentials and what's the average for what you need to score in terms of grade point average and what are the extracurriculars and internships and how do you stand out? Like what's the norm?
Mm-hmm.
Which I got. And so it was just okay, that's all I got to do is just beat that. And
Yeah.
I did. I think it was like a 3.8 something. I ended up getting like a almost a 4.0. And
Right.
so that's one of the biggest indicators that they look at. And then they look at what other extracurriculars have you done. And so I
Right.
ended up doing 2 or 3 internships to
Wow.
stack the deck. And I did a 1-year transfer. I found out that you get slightly better odds if you do a 1-year transfer versus a 2-year transfer. And
Oh,
if anything else, you get 2 chances to apply to USC, right?
smart.
So
Okay.
I was
Yeah.
like, let me just play the odds in my favor. So I kind of just figured out what are the ins
Yeah.
and outs and like how do I game the system a little bit more in my favor. And so applied, got in and ended up and this is the awesome part. I mean USC is like 100,000 a year right now. I was like
Yes.
50, it was half the price when I was going and it was like 50,000 a year. And, I ended up saving because I maxed out my units at community college.
Yeah.
I could have transferred and I could have graduated a semester earlier, would have saved me a little bit of money. But, in my case, I still graduated on time. And so I still spent 2.5 years at USC and you still get the diploma. And I still, got access. I served on like 3 or 4 different alumni boards when I was at USC since I graduated. And,
And you're still really connected. I mean, you are still hooked up with Jim Ellis and all those guys, like big
mhm,
people at SC.
yeah.
So it just goes to show you the grit.
That's I think the most valuable thing that I could probably share is like grit's a muscle, but you got to
Yep.
develop it and you got to, like we all go through shit and it's getting past that, right? So that's just part of life.
When did your grit muscle show up? Because I mean, I think that is one of the things that is so lacking these days, whether it's young people or just most people. I mean, certain cultures definitely have more grit than others, but I'm just like I might be like as gritty as sandpaper because I just feel like I just will white knuckle it like sometimes way past the point of when it should be. But
Mhm.
when did you realize that you had this grit in you or that that's what it was going to take?
You know what? I played sports my pretty much most of my life.
Mm. Mhm.
And especially when in my youth, I played a lot of basketball. I swam. My mom had me swimming since I was a kid. And you play sports, right?
Right.
That's essentially where you learn to lose.
Yeah.
And because that's part of it, Michael Jordan was losing a ton, right? He
Right.
has all those quotes, right? that's where it all started. Is I think there's a place in life of, you get that second place, third place, 10th place trophy and it sucks and you're like, I don't want to do that again. How do I
Right.
not do this again? And then try
Right.
to improve. Now, I think I don't have kids, so I have a lot of nieces and nephews though. And
Yeah.
one of the things that, you're seeing now more apparently is there's a lot
Mhm.
of entitlement, that comes from, folks that are, building out. There's just parents are unfortunately entitling their kids.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of variable reasons, right? Social media is a part of this. You're seeing a lot of copycats. You're seeing a lot more people like nurture, and you get the 10th
Yeah.
place trophies and things.
Yeah.
And I go on and on. But grit is how it all started. Where it all kind of built up was from all the sports that I used to play as a kid.
And
And
then were your parents like hard on you? I mean, were they really like pushing you and motivating you to do
yeah,
well,
yeah.
or were they pretty?
To a certain extent, I wouldn't say I had helicopter parents,
Mhm.
but I had parents that were like, no, no, the expectation growing up is if you don't get A's, it's Asian parent household.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you're not getting A's, you're like
Yeah.
disowned as a child. So it's like you
Yes.
kind of don't have a choice of like this is just expectation.
Right.
Expectation is, oh, you're going to college. It's like going to high school. Like, what do
Right.
you mean? Like that's it's a non-negotiable. And
Right.
so you're just like, oh, okay, all right, it is. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
I realize way later that that's not, but that's what's just what you're told. That's what you're
You
told,
don't
right?
even
So you don't
think.
know
You just
yeah,
are like,
you don't know any better. You're just like, "Oh, okay, I like everyone gets A's or you have to get an A. Okay, I got it."
yeah, I love that. And so where do you think that founders or people who are just pursuing their goals, like, well, first of all, let me ask you the bigger picture question. Do you think it's kind of universally rough for everybody? I mean, some people have it rougher than others, but do you think that in any great success, whether it's Michael Jordan or I don't know, ballerina or somebody who invented something amazing in science, do you think they've all had pretty tremendous failures, or do you think some people are like, it wasn't so bad?
That's a very variable question, right? Because look, I think a lot of times people are just born into unfortunate
Mhm.
circumstances, right? For a variety of reasons. Sometimes
Right.
you might have one parent, sometimes you're born into the foster care system, right? That's
Right.
outside of your control.
Right.
Now, unfortunately, the way that the system and society is set up, you're
Mhm.
basically working backwards, right? I mean,
Right.
you're working from behind and you have a lot of ground that you're now like you have to cover to catch
Yes.
up to someone, who's born into a wealthy situation,
Yep.
has multiple nannies and has all the coaches in the
Yep.
world and, study system, right?
Right.
So to a certain extent, yes, you're born into certain situations,
Mhm.
but in terms of like your grit, I mean, you hear a lot of stories of people that, accelerate and, are become ambitious and whatever circumstances are, like some people break and some people it kind of molds them and it like reinforces, makes them come back. Yeah, again, like tough times, tough people.
Right.
And
Right.
sometimes it makes them more tough. That's like a nurture versus nature question. And
Right.
it's, how much are you influenced by society versus like genetics, right? I don't,
Mhm.
it's hard to tell.
Yep.
I believe everyone has it in them to dive internally deep and to bring out the best version of yourself. Like that's why grit's a muscle, right?
Right.
It's something that you can work out. The question is how much pain, how much suffering, how much are you willing to endure to get to that next stretch or next to that
You
that
made
that
a
milestone.
You brought up a really great point, and you mentioned that before about grit being a muscle, which I agree 1000%. And I think it's why sometimes when people retire, their brains they'll just be like, wow, I'm just not feeling as sharp or whatever. And why some people, makes them nervous to retire. But I think that it's important to emphasize is that it's a muscle for all of us. And maybe some of us have it like a little bit more, that grit muscle, maybe a little bit more naturally developed, right? But you've got to keep it in shape and you have to keep working it. And the tougher times are what actually makes you get to the next level, at least for me. I mean, when I look back on my career and I think of the a couple times when they were just the toughest, and there were a couple last year, well, at least one last year where I was just like, "Oh my gosh, like I can't believe I'm here again." And that's you recover faster, but B, it is just part of it, and that's when I've made the most giant strides. Like, when I think back to times that were really cushy in my career,
Mhm.
like maybe just, things were just flowing and I just was kind of like bam, 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 I kind of coasted. I mean, I got a little bit lazier. I can think of those times. I mean, you're still showing up and you're still, doing it, but you're not as hungry. And I think the pendulum has to swing so that we stay, if we're going to stay on our games, right? You've got to keep reinventing yourself. And I think that your advice really follows last week's episode well, because it shows you have to just keep trying and you have to just keep showing up. And Woody Allen, I forget that quote he has, it's like something like 80% is just
Showing up
showing
or
up,
yeah.
right? I'm starting to think it's more like 95% is just showing up because people give up.
Mhm.
And so what are some challenges that you've had in your career other than your 17-year-old devastation of going to community
Oh.
college? But like what are some other tough ones that maybe some of the listeners can listen to, whether it's like business or personal, whatever, where people can really say, "Oh my gosh, okay, yeah, that happened to me, and I don't feel alone anymore."
Yeah, I mean, I've had a bunch, right? Like the college incident, that was one, and then right after that, I was my first job out of college was the startup nonprofit. I was living in Chicago for a couple years running
Mhm,
this. I treated it as if it was like I was the founder of the company. I
mhm,
wasn't. I was just the first hire. And in building that whole organization, there's a lot of changes that we went through.
mhm.
And I ended up like with one of the changes, I was forced to resign. Uh, and
What?
and
Why?
that was just unfortunate. My role evolved, and the short version of the story is actually, it is only a short version. Basically, my job, I was hired to grow and scale it as first director of events, did that for
Mhm,
3 months, hosted our conference, and then they
mhm,
hired me as like a managing director to basically grow and scale the organization. So they
mhm.
wanted me to double the number of volunteers and and high schools that we were teaching our program into, which I
Right,
did.
right.
And then so did that for about a year, year and a half or whatever that was. And then my next gig after that was we needed to focus on quality control,
Mhm.
and we were going down this whole tech route. And so we needed to slow down growth, which is what my job was. I enjoyed doing it too anyways, so that was like that like fluidly fell into place.
Mhm.
That's also when I realized I really love marketing and social media and all of that. Anyways, because my role was no longer needed, they tried putting me into like a fundraising role, and they
Oh,
kind of just threw me in, which is it's a little I can do it now, but it's a much more different skill set that I needed to acquire,
totally.
and
Mhm.
it was a sink or swim situation. And so they were like,
Yeah.
"Hey, you basically are going to be responsible for spearheading this fundraising campaign. You need to raise $10,000 and then go get a bunch of email newsletter subscribers. This is the
Talk about
goal.
a
Go."
different
Yeah.
muscle. I mean, it might seem like apples to apples, but it's not, it's different. I mean, yeah, okay. So, how did you feel after that?
Oh, it
I
sucked.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah, no, look, again, that high school being rejected from college example, this is
yeah,
again now, oh shoot, my self-worth is attached to this. I don't
right.
feel like I'm a value, like, oh, I messed up or like I'm no longer needed. Like,
Right.
so there's a lot of that rejection, all of that kind of takes place. I was able
Yeah.
to take a step back though, and I read enough books on grief, and it's like there's the 5 stages of grief and all this other stuff.
Oh, wow.
So
So you really treated it as you were grieving.
yeah, I was, like, reading books in real time. This is, like I'm talking, like, 1 or 2 days later.
So you resigned or whatever your situation, you're not at this, so you're not feeling it's a self-worth thing, but
Yeah.
you focused on the grief process, because I think that's great. That's something that like people who are listening can really focus on. They can go down that that step. And I agree with you, because I think sometimes even if you want the change, right? Even if you're been pushing for the change, even if you know it's for the best, like I mean, I can't even imagine like seeing you at a fundraising for a nonprofit versus what like all the amazing things you're doing now, and all the amazing podcasters and stuff you're bringing to the table. But okay, so that's pretty wise of you to just go, I'm going to go down the grief path.
So I was reading a book, and I used to subscribe to this blog, James Altucher. I'm probably butchering his last name, but
How do you
anyways,
spell?
Altucher, James
Oh,
first
okay.
name.
Got it.
Anyway, he had a couple of books and blogs about how he got fired 2, 3, 4 times, made money, lost money, made money, lost money in finance and a bunch of other verticals. He's like one of those
Yep.
ballies, ups and downs in life, right?
Hmm.
And I'm
Yeah.
like not. So just you read that and you read someone that's like gone through it,
Yeah.
it just makes things a lot easier. And then what I started to do is I started to tell like friends that had been fired or had a similar situation take place. And so I learned from them about how they were able to recover from that entire
Hmm.
experience and kind of pick it up. So I learned from them. I was reading the book in real time when this kind of happened. And then I kind of finished it through to then. Well, this was the interesting part. I went from working 70, 80 hours a week or whatever I was working at the time,
Hmm. Hmm.
it was 60 hours a week to literally not having to report to a boss or no one. And I was
And
like, I
that's
don't have to do for my time. I was like, wait, what the heck do I do? I was like, I just got all this time back. And I remember the
right.
first 2, 3, 4 days, I'm like, oh, wait, I don't actually have to do anything. And
Hmm.
I'm going to take back all the time that I used to stress out about all the stuff. And it was almost, there was a point there was a sigh of relief as much as there was like all this pain, which is like, oh wow, I got all this time back. What do I do with my time? And I was like, and actually got to do a lot of cool things. Like I started taking yoga, I started doing random things because I could. And then I was trying to figure out my next move, and I ended up taking up sabbatical. So I did take like my first proper vacation where I'm like, oh, I don't actually have to work
Isn't
while
that
I'm
amazing?
like while I'm traveling. So I did whatever I wanted to do, and I took about a month or so off to kind of maybe it ended up being like 2 months. I ended up doing getting a social media internship, and like part of this process was like, okay, what do I want to work on next? I realize this is now what I like to do. This is what I don't like to do,
Yep.
and so this is like aspects of it. So kind of build off of that. I realized I love social media and marketing, and then that was
But
my next
Shrug, you were young. I mean, how old were you when this happened?
23.
And I mean, that's amazing to go through that and then be like, I'm going to study the process of grief and then reach out to other people who have kind of gone through similar things. And how, and I think sometimes, at least for me, I mean, I'm always so relieved once I finally do like reach out for help, or no matter what it is. Like, I ask somebody who's better at something than I am, or if I'm challenged in a situation, you reach out and you say, hey, listen, I'm really struggling. But sometimes it's that first time of reaching out saying, like, hey, this happened to me. How did you do that? Like, were you embarrassed to be like, hey,
Oh
Joe
yeah, yeah. No,
Blow?
I didn't even tell my parents or my family I got fired or I got forced to resign until 2 or 3 days later.
Oh,
Uh,
wow. Okay.
I was like, the first day I was like, I need to hold this in, and like I just
So
like
did
I
you
don't know
just
what
go to
else
the
to do.
office like with like you were all dressed up going, like, were you one of those people who went and like packed their lunch and stuff and acted as if you still had it, or were you just like, oh no, I'm sick?
Well, we were working virtually, and
Oh,
so we always had a virtual setup, so that made things easier. We
yeah, for
technically had an in-person office, like, we were based out of the University of Chicago, the Booth School of Business. We're part of
hmm.
their accelerator program, and
Sure.
they just allowed us to have office space.
Yeah.
But, we were a small team, or it was a very nimble team. We were like 2 like 3, 4 staff full time, or the CEO, executive director was traveling, fundraising half the time, so he wasn't even in town. So if
Yeah.
I needed the office, I would use it. Sometimes I just did because I was like, I like the environment
Yeah.
and I feel
Yeah.
like I get more done. It's just
Yeah.
nice. And it's a beautiful campus too. And then sometimes I would just be like, it's cold, it's snowing, it's negative 10
Yeah.
degrees. I'm staying
Right.
home.
Right. Right. So
So
okay, so you don't tell people for a few days, and then when did you reach out to the first person
well,
that had been
actually, so
fired
my
to
my
kind of
roommate was the first person that found out. I just found out that I was forced to resign, and, like, 30 minutes later, my roommate walks in, and I'm, like, completely distressed, and my
oh,
roommate's
that's
like,
the
"Hey,
worst.
what's going on?" And I'm like, "I just got fired." And she's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, shit, what?" And I was like, "Wait, what happened?" And I was like, "I don't know, this" I was like, "I don't know." He just said, "Hey, we" like, whatever. He basically said, You didn't do anything wrong, but we need to let you go." And I blanked on every single thing else he said because I literally was just, like, shocked, and I wasn't
Well, plus
expecting
you're a very smart guy. So, I mean, in your world, going back to just like, that you get the A's and everybody goes to college and all that stuff. I mean, you're not used to that kind of thing happening.
it's entrepreneurship, so there's a lot of ups and downs in between
Yes.
that. But yeah, that I wasn't expecting, at least not like that, especially not with like the amount of effort and things that I was putting in.
So
But
what
again,
happened? Did the roommate say, "Let's go get drunk," or did he say like, "Oh, I have another friend who got fired," or like where did it kind of go from
no, no,
there?
we just talked for like 30 minutes or so. My roommate was going to law school, so she was busy with all her normal stuff that
Yeah.
she to
Yeah.
grind and do.
Right.
What I ended up doing though, like that afternoon, is like, okay, I need to take some time off, and so like
Mhm.
I went out, I walked, and then I was like, you know what, screw this. And I've always throughout my life, exercise has been like a relief. It's been like one of my ways to decompress
Yeah.
and a very healthy way to do so too, because it's a
Absolutely.
habit that I've still continued. And so I went for like I think like a 7 or 8 mile run or something like that. And it was one of those where I just like I need to go tunnel vision and I need to like force the dopamine
Yeah.
rush to hit as much as I can.
Yeah.
And it's like anytime anytime you exercise, anytime you're down, go exercise, it will automatically uplift you to a certain extent.
Well, and that's a good thing to remember because it's quite frankly the last thing sometimes I want to do. Well, a lot of times it's the last thing I want to do. Now, I still do it regularly, don't get me wrong. But especially like if something happens and I'm down, I know that's what I need to do, and I have to really trick myself, though. Like, I have to really be like, "Marley, just go for 10 minutes. That's all you have to do, and then you're gonna come right back," knowing full well once I start, then I'm fine, but you're right, it's almost like you have to exercise or do something that's gonna chemically override what's happening in your brain,
Yeah.
because that pity party can get
Yes.
very
Yeah.
dark and deep very fast, and I will raise my hand and speak for myself with that. So so you did that, and then when like, how did you come up with the idea of, like, "I'm gonna talk to other people who are fired?"
I think there's part of like this was like the mental model portion that I built out. Like one of the things that I knew early on, and this was like some of the ways that I learned, which was from peers, which is one of the things that I always did was I call it like your board of advisors. So people that are in your same position at
Mhm.
different companies that you could talk to,
Hmm.
that you could rely on. And then I have like mentors, so people that are much older than me that
Mhm.
I could talk to that, that have the life that provide the sage advice and the wisdom.
Mhm.
And that's something that I've kind of carried with me of like, hey, and then I try to find people that have gone through that experience and can
Mhm.
speak firsthand at what they've done because they've experienced it. Like those are the three things that I kind of focused on doing a little bit more immediately. And then I had a handful of friends that like I could just talk to and be like, yo, this just happened. Like I had my roommate was there. Eventually, I called like 2, 3 other friends. Not I don't know if it was that day or like 24 hours later that I could
Mhm.
just talk to, and we would just like shoot the shit, right? So that becomes like
Yeah.
your rock, someone that you have on your back pocket that you could just vent to and then just like be real with. And that was one of the things that there were a handful of people. There's way more people now that I've been able to kind of build just because again, there's a lot of learnings and things that
And
I've
talk
done.
about a muscle. I mean, after you failed a few times, you get very used to being like, "Oh, yeah, this just happened."
Yeah.
It's not such a big deal, whereas
Well, you know what the easiest way to frame it, I mean, we learned this in grade school, the scientific method, right? It's like test your hypothesis, have a hypothesis, you have a question, then test the hypothesis, iterate, test it out. If it
Mhm.
works, great. If it doesn't work, great. Iterate, go back and do the process all over again, right?
Right.
And so that's essentially what failure is if you think about it. It's you're trying the same thing over and over and over again until you finally figure out how to do it, right?
Yeah.
That's like the whole point of this.
That's a great way to put it because what I kind of want to do is normalize the failure process and just like kind of destigmatize some of that stuff because I go back to, as long as you're looking at social media, everybody's career trajectory, everything is postable or it's not. And I'm not saying you've got to, you know, to air all of your dirty laundry, but I do think it's really important to just be like, This happens. This kind of
Yeah.
stuff happens to everybody. Maybe everybody's not fired, but
Yeah.
everybody is somehow doesn't get the job they wanted or is not promoted or is really really disappointed and feels like it's the end of the world, and I think most importantly feels like they are the only one that this has ever happened to, or even if they
Hmm.
know somebody else, they have to be feeling worse.
Yeah.
But I think you also hit on a big piece about happiness, right? Which is when they've done all these tests all over the world in the blue zones and everything else, the studies. the one universal thing that doesn't matter how much money, et cetera, you have is a connection to other people is crucial to happiness. And if you don't have that, and you've hit on that multiple times, whether it was your parents, your roommate, your friends, reaching out, mentors, you've you're getting out of your own head and
Mhm,
into something else. Like, okay, reaching out, and then by the way, you probably don't realize it, but you probably really helped the people you reached out to because they were probably happy to help. I mean, it goes
mhm,
both ways. When you give something to
yep,
people, it genuinely does make you feel better too.
mhm. Yeah,
So,
there's a lot of reciprocity there for sure.
yeah, I love that. And what about these days? Because I think in the beginning, when we're in our careers, the struggles are can be like so giant, from like which industry am I going to be in, right? Making those kind of decisions. But what about now? Like what are you focused on for 2026, and why? And how are you going to get there? What's your sort of strategy this year?
I'll touch on this because the failure never ends. It's a
Yes.
process. I
Yeah.
like firstly, it's not like, oh, it stops and then you don't fail anymore. Like, I'll give you an example. When this was just several years ago at Mission Matters, we ended up launching. So we started off as a book publishing company. My
Mhm.
co-founder Adam has interviewed now 6,000 people, but at the time probably interviewed like 1,000 or so people. I think
Mhm.
he's been interviewing almost 1,000, like anywhere from 700 to 1,000 people a year. So
Jeez.
do the math, it ends up being a lot of interviews. Anyways,
Yes.
we were conducting so much content and conducting so many interviews. He started getting 1 or 2 people asking him every single week for help and advice to launch their own podcast. And there was a point maybe after the 10th inquiry that he got that he started keeping the tabs on it, and he had a spreadsheet of like, hey, these are all the people that are asking me about a podcast.
Mhm.
And so I think after like 30, 40 people, he let me know. He's like, hey, listen, look, we have like 40, 50 people that have asked about a podcast school. Like, there's all these schools that are launching.
Mhm.
I'm going to record some content and I'm going to create like a school, a podcast school, and let's launch it. We'll launch a course, we'll launch a program so we can teach
Mhm.
people how to do podcasting.
Mhm.
He invested 3 months
Yeah.
to record all the content, had about 90 videos recorded. We launched the
Oh.
podcast school. We pilot it with a bunch of those people that inquired. I
Mhm.
think we got one person that purchased the school. I think we're
Ugh.
charging like $1,000 or whatever it was, and then we gifted it
Mhm.
away to a bunch of people, and then maybe some discounted rates here and there. I think we maybe made like $1,500 on that whole thing.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Anyways, I say that because we're like, okay, this completely failed. What was interesting is a handful of those students that went through the program were like, hey, this is really informative, but I'm a doctor. I'm a business owner. I give two shits about sitting there back and editing my freaking audio content.
Right.
I don't
Right.
want to do this. I just pay you and you do this for me. You're recording, 50 to 100 interviews a week. I only need one a week. I'll pay you. Just do it for me. And that's how we launched our podcast agency, right? So
Well, and that's exactly how you guys got me, because I was constantly being asked, like, "Oh, you should," because I was like the, bridesmaid, never the bride, but I would always be guests on these podcasts, and then people would always say, "Oh, you should have your own podcast." You should, and I was like, "Absolutely not," because I said I do not want to do all that editing, all that back end stuff. If I could just be the talent, great. And then that's when Adam was like, "No, no, no, let's really just talk." And I was like, the guy was so nice when he interviewed me for his that I was like, "Oh, okay." And that's how it went. And I was like, "Are you sure? Like, I do not have to." And by the way, it's not like I don't like editing photos and, stuff like that. The visual things I do, but it just that wearing those two hats. So I'm not surprised that's what made it take off.
the 2026 strategy, back
Yeah.
to your original question, we have launched a think tank.
Oh,
It's
okay.
it's
Oh,
our
right. I saw that. Yes.
it's
Okay. Tell us
our
about that.
our community, our members. So basically, Adam and I for folks that don't know, real quick, my background is I used to own a luxury magazine at one point,
Mhm.
and I've been in working with a lot of different membership clubs for a long time, and I've been trying to figure out, and
Like
even
what kind
working.
of membership club? Just give people more of an
Yeah, I
example.
mean, this is like I've been a part of like private membership clubs of like
Mhm.
kind of like a Soho House equivalent, something
Got it.
like that. I've been a part of obviously a variety of gyms,
Mhm.
and like I was part of the LA Athletic Club, and then I've
Mhm.
been a part of social clubs too, where
Mhm.
maybe they don't have a physical location, but it's a social. You're bringing people
Right.
together. You pay a monthly fee of some sort.
Yeah.
Anyways, there's a lot of competition out there. There's a lot of membership clubs, and it was like, what can I do that's a little bit more unique and different? Our think tank, the easiest
Mhm.
way to explain it is it's basically like Forbes meets a forum and we kind of
Okay.
combine that together. So what we're doing is, because right now Mission Matters, we're agnostic, our media platform, we create content and interview experts in every industry.
Right.
Our philosophy was very simple. This entire world is converging, and you're seeing a
Mhm.
lot of industries converge. You're seeing tech
Yeah.
and AI be infused
Yeah.
in everything we do. And what happens, we've seen it time and time again because we've introduced so many people in different industries. That's
Yeah.
really what our events are like right now.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what happens if you bring in 30, 35 people that are the best at what they do,
Mhm.
and then you introduce them to each other? Our whole thing is, if you bring mission driven leaders, allow
Mhm.
them to connect that are aligned in character, in values, and traits. They're good people,
Yeah.
and they really want to help one another. They really want love
Yeah.
helping. You
Yeah.
bring 35 people like that together, and you provide the system, the framework, and you're allowing people to, learn from one another. The
Mhm.
default is people's guards will come down,
Yeah.
people will trust one another, and once the trust is established, that's when all the business takes place. That's when you invest into each other's companies, that's when you start becoming each
Yeah.
other's clients, that's when everything else can skyrocket, that's when collaboration happens.
Right.
And
Right.
so that's essentially what we've been able to do at a lot of our events. I mean, we host, 50, 60, 70 events a year
I
already.
know. It's
And
crazy.
so this is essentially our way to build a community that, on one hand, it's
Mhm.
creating this forum where you're creating this interdisciplinary approach where peers can learn, that are probably the best at what they do,
Right.
learn and teach one another.
Right.
And then, so quarterly in person, we call them immersives.
Mhm.
And then these gatherings basically. And then we're going to coordinate social gatherings, different things year round, from
Mhm.
dinners and activities we'll organize. But then the other difference is, because we're a media platform, we're going to provide thought leadership opportunities for each person. So
Very
provide
cool.
each person a member speaking opportunity, being a guest on our podcast, helping them, contribute, write articles across our platform, which we're going to invest quite a bit of money into promoting and across our board. And then, because we have this branding agency, we can help people figure out what their missions are if they need assistance there. So you get the brand build, you get
Mhm.
the actual execution and the thought leadership that comes with this for growth, and then the community to connect people. So
And then you mentioned 35. Is that the number that you're gonna have?
approximately, yeah, más menos. It's funny, we soft launched this, just so you know. This was like a
Mhm.
product that we built out, and we're like, let's just test it out. Let's just see if people
See what
even
happens.
bite.
Yeah.
And we probably asked like 50, 60 people, and we got like 15, 20. I think we got like close to 50 people that have already signed on. Okay, this is gonna work. And so we're like, all right, this is the core thing. And then that soft launch
Mhm.
turned into, oh shoot, we actually need to go create a contract for the deck that we created. We got a lawyer,
Yep.
created a contract, got the first person signed in, paid, and we're like, okay, shoot, now we have no choice but to fill this
Right.
up.
Right. Right. We're
And
on the
then,
hook.
so yeah, we're on the hook. Now we're like, okay, this is now happening. And we're like, oh shoot, I've talked about the program high level. I actually got to build this now. So that's essentially building it, launching it, seeding it, piloting it,
And
and then
so
we have
when do you think it'll start?
Jan. I actually believe by end of Jan we'll have all the cohort filled.
Mhm.
February we're gonna do us like more the onboarding, and
Yeah.
then we'll host the first one end of March, and then it'll be quarterly thereafter, with more programming dialed in throughout the
Good
year.
for you. Now, do you wanna give out, like, the URL or info to get more about it, or do you think it's
Yeah,
not are
yeah.
you
We have an application process that we're going through for this first cohort. Our goal is dial this in and do it so well
Yeah.
that the following year, when we launch our next cohort, we may launch in different cities, and
Yeah.
that's the angle that we want to take. So we'll do one in LA, one in New York, maybe one in Asia, one in Middle East, one in Europe.
And you
So
can be in any industry to join it.
the way that we're doing this, yes,
Yeah. I love it. I love it. And so that's what's got you fired up about 2026.
yeah.
What are your KPIs gonna be? What are your key performance indicators gonna be for this?
Well, firstly, getting the cohort filled, right?
Mhm.
So that's one. Secondly, making sure that attendance is high, because that's the whole point of this. Making
Mhm.
sure people are contributing content throughout the
Mhm.
year and in some capacity or form. And then by the end of the year, we want to see that people are, number one, our number one goal here is making sure that people are becoming friends first,
Yeah.
because
Right.
the business, everything else always follows, right?
Always.
That's just what we've seen historically. So if we can do our job, I can't
Yeah.
control the outcome. The
Right.
outcome we're hoping for is that people become each other's clients and best friends and all that.
Well, that
The
happens,
only
and
thing we
that's
can
just natural.
control is we have to set the stage and provide the environment and the space for people
Yeah.
to actually do that. So that's
Yeah.
what we can.
I love it. Well, Shruag, the time has flown by, and this was just absolutely perfect to follow the first, like, hey, it was a dumpster fire and now there's hope. Let's like build something interesting. But I also love the great tips you gave about, you know, if you've had some setbacks, reach out to other people, read about grief,
Mhm.
like follow some other processes that are in place to start making yourself feel better and realize you're not alone. And there's certain things you've just got to tough it out. Nothing lasts forever, good or bad.
Yep.
Yeah, that's sometimes rough to remember. But so Shirag, how can people find you? Social media?
My handle across the board is Chirag D, my middle initial D as in dog, Sagar, my last name. That's it. Chirag D Sagar on
Wherever
every
they want to
platform.
find you.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what's the Mission Matters website?
Missionmatters.com.
Well, that's pretty easy. Okay. Well, I can't thank you enough for playing the game with me and giving us so many of your great tips and tricks. I had no idea about the community college thing. I have even more respect for you now than I did before. So, everybody, thank you for listening to another episode of Every Day's a Train Wreck. I'm your host, Marley Major. You can find me on Instagram at the Profit Goddess. Since this is kind of a businessy topic, we'll give out that Instagram. And please subscribe, sign up, and most importantly, share the episode with a friend, somebody who needs it and needs to hear this, because that way they'll know they're not alone and that you're thinking about them. So what a great good deed. Okay. So we will see you next week on Every Day's a Train Wreck. Thanks again. Thanks,
Thank
Sharag.
you for having me.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.